In part 1 of this film, I was lucky enough to get a day's training out in the new Radical SR1 around Silverstone, and while that was a brilliant experience, it was time to use the car for what it was designed: to race. I had a seat in the 4th round of the SR1 Cup taking place on the Silverstone GP circuit. With qualifying and then 2 20-minute races on the Saturday, followed by qualifying and a 45-minute endurance race on the Sunday, it was going to be a jam-packed weekend and my first ever proper wheel-to-wheel race experience. But for me, the race weekend started on the Friday, with one last chance to get to know the car and the track a little better before it started to count.
The next time I get in this car, it will be for qualifying. So this is the last chance I have to actually learn the track, learn the car. Now, my pace so far is way off where it needs to be even be mildly competitive. I can perhaps trim a couple of seconds off my lap time, which would be great.
It was also an opportunity to get used to the nerves of waiting to start a race. The SR1 is built specifically to keep novices like me as safe as possible, but there's always that niggling thought in the back of your head that something could go wrong. That something, though, can be quite unexpected.
F***ing hell! Holy Well, that was terrifying. Oh, what was I saying about motorsport being dangerous? He just overtook me. I let him pass because I was still getting used to the car, and the back of the car flew off at me. There he goes. Let's try that again. Session is coming to an end. We've had the checkered flag, so I've got a little bit of time to kind of mentally debrief. I have so much to learn about getting everything out of this car. It's ridiculous. If I'm brutally honest, one of the scariest things I think I've ever done, if not the scariest thing. Woo! Pulling into the pit.
With that last practice session over, it was time to take stock of my performance. My lap times were a good few seconds off the pace of the more experienced competitors, and there was still so much to learn about the circuit itself. Corners like cops that rely on little to no braking and commitment to a blind bend at high speed are opportunities to gain or lose so much time. But the confidence and skill required to master them still eluded me. Our qualifying session was bright and early, and I eagerly strapped myself back into the SR1 and headed back out on track. This is where the race weekend starts properly. It's Saturday morning and it all kicks off with a 20-minute qualifying session that will set the order for the grid. My fastest lap time would set my position for race 1, and my second fastest time would set my starting position for race 2. Qualifying proceeded under waved yellow flags for what seemed like an eternity, which should have been frustrating, but actually gave me a chance to settle in and let the nerves subside, because there were a lot of nerves. It was like standing, waiting to do a bungee jump. You know it will be fun, and you know that although there's an element of danger, you're going to be alright, but that doesn't make it any less scary standing on that ledge.
I have no idea where I've qualified. I need to go and check the times. I'm expecting to be last or second from bottom. I need more laps to be ready, but I don't have them, I don't get them. I need to be in that car racing in just a couple of hours. Let's see what happens.
My suspicions about where I'd ended up in qualifying turned out to be accurate.
As expected, I'm right at the bottom, but crucially not last. But because it was raining, finding my feet again, I know that the times of the cars just ahead of me are actually very close to what I was doing in testing. So I know I can at least try and get close to the cars in front and be very competitive with the car that qualified near me. So even though I'm not going to be troubling anyone near the front of the pack at all, there's a potential for me to have some battles out there with some drivers who are on the exact same skill level and same experience level as me. I'll be honest, just being able to walk around Silverstone in your race kit, there's something about being here, absorbing the magic, being here for this reason, not here as a spectator, not here to work, but here to enjoy a race, to drive, to actually use the track, what it's here for. It's quite a thrill. Driver briefing's happening now. That's the next thing to do.
With the start time of our first race quickly approaching, the heavens added one more layer of jeopardy. Turns out the drama didn't even wait for the green flag.
It's coming up to race time. We've got a couple of minutes before I need to head off to the staging area. And what was a little bit of drizzle during qualifying has turned into persistent rain. So much so that all the cars on the grid have had their tyres swapped out for wets. Never driven at pace in the wet before in this car, so I'm a little concerned. So I'm trying to go and find someone who knows something about these tyres and what the difference is. Obviously you need to be more cautious in the rain. Can't take quite as much speed through the corners, grip will be compromised, but by how much? I don't want to be too cautious and completely miss an opportunity to do any kind of wheel-to-wheel racing, but trying to get my head around what a wet race is going to look like.
The race was to have a rolling start with 2 formation laps. While trying to warm their tyres, one of the SR3s managed to lose control and spin off the track on the Hamilton straight, catastrophically damaging their car. They rejoined the track right in front of me, and for the second time in 2 days, I was treated to a large piece of bodywork flying off the car in front of me. This was even before the race had started. The rolling start meant that I wouldn't have to worry about getting off the line successfully, but it did mean that the whole pack barreled into the first corner at full pelt. With the rain coming down, it was clear that it wouldn't be long before something happened, and it quickly did. There was a multi-car collision at Club Corner just ahead of me, and while trying to get round it, I did the one thing you're not meant to do and stared directly at the car blocking my path. I got around it, but I had to go the long way, which meant I was overtaken by the car behind, who found a better route through. That car also had a novice racer in it, which meant I now had someone with a similar skill level who I could chase. I took a lap to see where I was quicker and planned an overtake. Then, at the end of the Wellington straight, I knew I could brake later than him and made a pass coming into Brooklands. I had made my first proper motorsport overtake, and I would stay ahead for the rest of the race.
So that was my first ever race, and to be honest, my objective was just finish, and I did finish. Quite a few cars didn't, but really what I need to keep in mind is that I've just completed my first race. An actual wheel-to-wheel race at Silverstone.
Quickly it was time for race 2, and once again I was starting second last on grid. I was able to hold my position until the building confidence I had led to an inevitable running out of talent at a crucial point.
So that's the end of race 2, and it truly isn't a track day experience for me if I don't spin at some point, and unfortunately that's what happened in this race. On the last lap I was trying to build more and more speed, get braver through some of the faster corners. Unfortunately that means you have to scrub that speed off again, and if you don't do it right you spin, and that's unfortunately what happened. So I was second last for the entire race, and on the last lap I lost that position to finish dead last. But honestly, I don't really care about that. I got to spend the day racing at Silverstone. What more could someone ask for? Well, how about a second day of racing at Silverstone? Because tomorrow I'll be back for that endurance race. It's day 2, it's Sunday, and it's qualifying now for the endurance race later, and all the adrenaline and excitement from yesterday has gone. I didn't get a great night's sleep, and to be honest, I'm actually full of quite a lot of anxiety now, again. Let's get qualifying out of the way and see if I can just reset. So that was qualifying done for the endurance race. I don't yet know where I've qualified, although I'm certain it's last. Before I started, those feelings of anxiety and a bit of fear actually were quite profound. It's a combination of being low energy, tired from all the racing yesterday, and knowing what's coming up and what job I need to do. So it was a really kind of deep feeling of anxiety. It was actually quite scary, but the moment I pulled out onto track, it all went away. I had a task to focus on and a tool that I knew how to use. And while I'm not the fastest out there by far, I can get this car around the track. I didn't try to make as big a leaps forward as I was in previous sessions. It's very small incremental changes. Cops is terrifying. It's really scary. So I just backed off a bit there so I could learn more through Maggots and Becketts that follows. By compromising my exit on Cops a little bit, I've got a little bit more time to figure out what I was going to do through there. And that allowed me to just push a little bit harder going onto the hanger straight. And I picked some points to kind of measure my speed there so I could incrementally see if I was doing better. I was so focused on that though, I missed the checkered flag, which is pretty much a cardinal sin out on such a tightly run race day. As soon as we were off, the next lot are on. So I had to make a trip to see the clerk of the course and I got a rap on the knuckles. I was told never to do it again. Well, I've only got one more opportunity to do it again, and it's the last race I might ever do, and it's later on today. So it's time to decompress, calm down, and get my head in the game.
Unfortunately, the driver who was closest to me in the previous two races was not taking part in the endurance race on the Sunday, so I qualified last over a second behind the next competitor. I was likely to be at the back for the whole race, but I had an objective to bring my lap times down.
We moved the brake bias forward a little bit for this race to make it less skittish at the rear, less likely to lock up the rears, which may have contributed to the two spins that I had previously. So now it's actually time to go and line up in the staging area before I start the endurance race. Keeping in mind, this race is 45 minutes long and the previous races I've done, or even qualifying sessions, have all been 20 minutes each. This one even includes a pit stop in the middle, a mandatory pit stop. I've been briefed on how to do the pit stop. We've gone back over my laps. I can see places where I can gain so much time. Whether or not I have the guts to actually do it, I don't know. Very excited, nervous again. See what happens.
Having missed a checkered flag in qualifying, I was eager not to miss my pit board telling me to come in, but somehow I managed to read it wrong and came in for my mandatory stop a lap too early. To make matters worse, on the way out of the pits, my driver's side mirror fell out of its housing. So not only did I have to come in for a stop-go penalty, I was now blind down one side of the car. I tried everything I could to string together a fast lap and bring my time down below the 2 minutes and 20 second mark, a time that seemed well within my grasp. But not wanting to hold up faster drivers in the SR3 cars that were out on track at the same time, I gave up valuable seconds letting them through. As it turns out, my fastest lap was the very last one of the race, but upon seeing the checkered flag, I let up on full throttle, coasting across the line, adding a few tenths to that fastest lap.
And just like that, the racing weekend is over. A 45-minute endurance race felt like a lot before it started, but having done it now, it absolutely flew by. There was the pit stops, which is a whole new experience. Unfortunately, I misread one of the boards and came in a fraction too early, and I got a stop and go penalty. But I wasn't challenging for the podium, so that didn't make too much difference, and I got to experience a whole other aspect. What was more worrying is that at some point my right mirror fell out and I was kind of blind, and being the kind of person who's getting overtaken by a lot of faster cars, that was somewhat of a concern. But I tried to take every single lesson that I've learned and try and just push harder, look further forward, use the car more. And even just on those last 5 or 6 laps just now, I was gaining more faith in what the car was able to do. Had a couple of spins happen right in front of me that I had to get round, but that's racing. For everyone doing it, this is a dream that they've held for such a long time. And for me, not only was it a dream to do some wheel-to-wheel racing like this, it was completely a pipe dream, not something I thought would ever actually be able to happen. Now this is it for me, but these guys will all go on to finish the rest of the season and maybe carry on their racing careers. And it is the first step for anyone trying motorsport, no matter what your age. I'm pushing 40 now, and this was my first ever race, so it's never too late to give it a go. And the Radical SR1 Cup, I think, must be one of the most fun ways to get started.
If you have the funds available and the desire to race, the Radical SR1 Cup offers an entry point into motorsport that will challenge any driver. But be warned, it's addictive. Which means it's a good thing that there's a coda to this story, because this isn't the last experience I got to have in a Radical on track. The Radical family of track cars only starts at the SR1, and its much, much bigger brother, the SR10, has a new model for 2022, and I was invited out to Portugal to drive that car around the Portimao F1 circuit, which is what we'll do in the next part of this series. So make sure you're subscribed so you do not miss my review of that car.